What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. In today's video we're making a knife out of knives. So here what I have are breakaway blades that we use in construction, and as I tend to do from time to time while I'm shopping around and looking at weird stuff that I can find to throw into a canister to make a knife, I ran into these guys and I said, well, if it's a blade it can make a blade. And they're relatively cheap, so I bought a whole bunch, and I decided that I was going to throw them into a canister with some steel powder and see what I got. So first things first, we're going to clean off all the residue. They come very heavily oiled, and I don't know what else comes on that oil, so we're just going to clean it up with some acetone and make sure that our steel is nice and clean. That way we have the best forge weld possible. And this is actually a very sketchy thing I'm doing because these knives are pretty sharp, and I was very careful. But if you plan to try this out yourself, definitely be very careful. It's very easy to cut yourself. These are sharp blades and they come factory sharp. And as always, we got our canister lined with our white spray paint, and we're just gonna toss them in there. Once they're all fully tossed in there, we give it a little shake up, make sure they fall in there very nicely. Even though that when I look back at it, I kind of figured that it was better just to leave it as is instead of shaking it up, because they all fell kind of pretty straight and that left some gaps. So it might have been better to leave a little without shaking it. I don't know if that makes sense. It would probably leave a more interesting pattern in there. Though the pattern did come out pretty interesting anyways, but there were definitely some big spots where there was either no blades or just powder basically. But back to the forging. As always, I'm forging top to bottom first, and that pretty much consolidates my billet. Afterwards, I just hit it from side to side, and I loosen up the billet on the inside, and I rip off the cap, and it always comes out fairly easy. And by always, I mean since I actually started using this method, I have like a 90-95% success rate, and they are a little finicky, but I do get them out pretty clean, and that is a pretty good win in and of itself. So I know different people do different methods, but this method has definitely worked for me. And if you're new to trying knife making or you're new to trying canister, I would definitely recommend this method because it works for me 90-something% of the time. While I was trying to figure out what kind of knife I would make out of this, I figured I would make a cleaver. That way I could show off whatever patterning I had the most I could. And I really like a cleaver because it's just a big open canvas. Now this knife ended up being more of an akiri than a cleaver. It was about 3 inches tall at the very end, 2 and change, 3 inches tall. So it definitely made a pretty nice akiri, but I mean, the name doesn't matter. It'll cut. That's all that matters. And I like to have that wide canvas so we can see what the pattern comes out as. Because normally when I do these videos, it's to more of an experiment than anything else. I could just be making regular knives like I would do for sale, but I think this makes more of an interesting video. That's why I go and go out of my way to find weird or different things to put into canisters. And if you have any ideas of something that I can put into canister to make something cool, definitely let me know in the comments down below, and if I can find it, I'll give it a try. Except for drill bits. Drill bits are a pain. I'm never doing that again. And so with my rough shape on my cleaver slash nakiri, I'm just gonna hammer it and get some of those little ripples that I have from the press out of it. In essence, there's not really much shaping to it. It's just a big square. So all I gotta do is really straighten up my lines, and the rest will be done with the grinder afterwards. And with some of the heavy cutting out of the way, which actually wasn't much cutting, now we're going to go on to our shaping of our knife. This is going to be a full tang knife, and so I decided to leave plenty of material for that. So all I'm doing is shaping it down with a worn 36 grip belt. I've made quite a few cleavers and the curies so far since I started knife making, but I just can't help but feel like I really need a power hammer so I could really get these bigger blades forged out correctly. And I've never owned or used a power hammer, but in my experience from using a press this whole time, the press does really well with a thicker stock. Like whenever I'm making Damascus or these canisters, it's pretty easy to forge it down pretty consistently. Not too thin though, because a press pretty much maxes out at like around a quarter to 3/8 thickness I found. And it really just depends. I can switch up the dies and use some more aggressive round dies, but I've always found that when I do that, I run the risk of over pressing because the port of contact is so much smaller, and I run the risk of damaging the end result. And I have actually damaged it multiple times in the past where I've overpressed and pretty much ruined the whole billet. So after heat treat, you can see that the mask is starting to pop out through there, and it makes a very cool looking random pattern that I really didn't think that a whole bunch of straight lines, straight blades would make. But it ends up coming out pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So back to my rant on the whole power hammer thing. I've noticed that I've seen on many videos a lot of people with power hammers, especially I see a lot of cleavers being forged in either Japan or China or wherever, and they forge them out super thin, and I feel like a really nice thin cleaver does a lot of work, especially when made correctly. And it's really hard to get that thinness whenever you're hand forging, and the press doesn't quite do it because it's very difficult to press underneath a 1/4 inch thickness. So a power hammer, even if it was a rather small power hammer, would be very nice to have. But at the same time, I kind of think of my neighbors, and do I really need a power hammer to be making more noise? You know? But enough on my ramblings. If you have any thoughts on this matter, let me know in the comments down below and we can chat about it. So this is a new piece that I've just added to my shop. It is a Sand Shark by Tyrell Knife Works. I've always wanted to have one, especially since I've seen the one that Churap uses on his videos, and I've always wanted to have one on my own. So I never really got to building one, so I decided to buy this one and give it a try. It is definitely a little different, and it's a little difficult to use at first, but I'm starting to get the hang of it now. So I'll definitely be doing a follow-up on that. You'll definitely see it in my videos moving forward. I will be using it, and I'll just have to get comfortable with it. But it definitely does cut down my hand sanding time significantly, which when I get better with it, I hope will cut down on my build time on these videos, as well as, you know, making other project knives to be able to sell online. That way I can have a decent catalog for anybody who wants to buy in different price ranges, especially since I know that not everybody wants to spend $500 on a pretty nice Damascus looking knife, or $1,000 or anything ridiculous like that, because I understand myself, I can't even afford that. The only reason I have nice knives and certain things is because I make them myself. So I'm very understanding of that, and I would really like to be able to make some really nice affordable knives. But I also am a business, and it has to be profitable for me as well. If not, I can just stick to making videos and being a hoarder with all my knives, as I tend to have done the last 2 years. So let me know in the comments down below, what would be your price range for a knife that you would spend, like reasonably you would be willing to spend on, let's say, a mono steel knife, not a Damascus, because Damascus is always gonna vary by maker and by all kinds of different things. The amount of steel used, the intricacy of the pattern, I mumbled my words there because I can't speak correctly sometimes. But all that stuff really does um, apply to the price. But on a good, solid monosteel knife, what would you be willing to spend? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see what I can do. Because that is definitely a business that I want to be able to make affordable knives for everybody that's interested in having a nice knife, because the reality of it is that a nice knife will change your life, because a lot of us cook a lot, and I personally didn't know what a good solid knife was until I had one in my hand and I started using it, and believe me, it's a life changer. But I'm also aware that not everybody can afford a $300 knife for cooking, especially in our current American economy, if you know what I am saying. So definitely let me know that in the comments down below. I really appreciate that feedback so I can take a lot of these things into consideration and figure out what's the best path to be able to get that going for you guys and for myself, because I want to be a little bit more productive and a little bit more lucrative with my YouTube venture and my venture in knife making in general. So I've rambled on pretty much the whole video, but here is the knife. I'm sharpening it up, and the pattern came out incredibly cool. I rambled along this video because, I mean, you've seen me make a cleaver before many a times, and this time the cleaver turned out pretty cool. I ended up doing a Piduk handle with some black liner so I could dip it into acid with the handle on, so I could etch all the way around the handle, not just on the actual blade portion. And I really love the look of the steel powder, even though it's 15 and 20. It has that speckly look from the different grains of high carbon and 15 and 20. And overall, this came out looking pretty cool. I did mess up on my hand sanding a little bit in there, so you can definitely see there is a low spot where I didn't sand correctly and I didn't notice until after the etch. But overall, it's a very cool looking piece, and I'm very happy with the end result. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate y'all, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace.